Hello everybody. So you have been working diligently on creating your curriculum guides, and I'm sure that whether or not or if you started with some curriculum guides that your district provided, you have made some edits to them. This last area that we're going to add, it deals with strategies, and we're going to see that this is really an important area, and it addresses especially those new teachers, but some veteran teachers can also benefit from this, especially if you're working through PLCs and your PLCs are effective. Because what we're going to see here is that this is where you can start to really differentiate instruction. So let's get into this. And early on in the course, you read your second reading, I believe, was Downey Standards for Curriculum. And so let's review those real quickly. The first thing is to establish a well-crafted, focused, valid, and clear curriculum to direct teaching. That's what you are creating. So all of this work you've been doing is concentrating on that first standard to create this well-crafted, focused, valid curriculum. Once you have this in place, then you can start moving into some of the other standards that Downey mentioned. Standard 2 provides assessment aligned with the curriculum. So we talked about assessments and included that in the curriculum. But in a Curriculum 2 class, what we would do is go in and examine those assessments and make sure they're aligned with all three curricula. So not just our taught curriculum, what we're doing with the students, but make sure that our assessments are aligned with our written curriculum and also with the state curriculum. And again, we would see here this concept of no surprises would come into play. Because if we've been assessing our students through common assessments along the way, or whatever assessments we're using, if they're aligned to the tested curriculum, then there will be no surprises once the students get there, not only in format, but in content as well. The third standard would be aligned program and instructional resources with the curriculum and provide student equality and equity. So this is where we would go in again at the next level and look at those resources and make sure that they align as well with the written and taught curriculum. Standard 4 uses a mastery learning approach and effective teaching strategies. This obviously is addressing the taught curriculum, and going to that mastery learning approach is an important thing here. Standard 5 would be to establish curriculum expectations, monitoring, and accountability. So this really is moving more into the realm of that building level leader, the principal, and what your roles as that principal will be if you have this well-established curriculum. How is it going to be monitored, and how are teachers going to be held accountable to it? And then finally, the sixth standard looks at planning, but it moves to a district level, and so this is where you would need to garner district support. Institute effective district and school planning, staff development, and resource allocation, and provide a quality learning environment. So I referenced the book that those first two readings came out of. They were really just the introduction to Downey et al. And their book, 50 Ways to Close the Achievement Gap. And what they do in that textbook is work through these 6 standards in those 50 ways. And I've done training and work with this, and so I know that it works. I've seen evidence of school districts where it has worked. And so again, all you have focused on in this course up to now is the first standard, working on that, developing that curriculum. A second level curriculum class would deal with more of the other standards. So let's look at what you have in your curriculum guides up to this point. You have included objectives, prerequisites, assessments, and resources. Today, in this last checkpoint, you're going to add approaches. And so what we mean by approaches are strategies. How are you going to give your teachers ideas to teach the material, especially with the new concept of assessment, that we use assessment to check if we delivered instruction effectively. If we delivered the instruction and we find that the majority of our students did not get it, then we have to go back and reteach it. So instead of leaving it completely up to the teacher, here's how you can include approaches for that teacher who decides, hey, I need to reteach this concept because the class didn't get it. So what does my curriculum guide give me as a different approach? Okay, so that's one reason we put approaches in there. Another reason that we really put approaches in there is to differentiate instruction for our students. And when we're talking differentiation, we're really talking about three different areas of differentiation: content, context, and cognition. And what I mean by that is the content. What's the minimal content that the students need in order to get? And we would put these for those students struggling in the course. And we would put that in this section here under approaches. What's the minimum that they need to get as far as content? And context, how are we going to ask them to display their learning? And how are we going to show them the material? Those two things can also come in here, and they can be different depending on the students and their level. Those students at the upper end of the spectrum who really have a good understanding and you just want to strengthen that grasp, you can add those kinds of things in here. What kind of enrichments can we add for those students? So content, context, and cognition. Here we're looking at Bloom's, and specifically how can we explain the material to the students, and then how can the students in turn demonstrate their understanding to us. Okay, all of this comes under strategies or approaches to the curriculum. So real quickly then, the four ratings under this. If you have no approach cited for classroom use, you would get a 0. To get a 1, you need an overall vague statement of how you're going to approach the subject. Okay, that's easy. Putting something in is going to get you a 1. But to raise it up to a 2, it's not this overall vague statement. You're going to provide general suggestions on approaches. Okay, and notice we have multiple approaches here. And to get a 1, you probably have 1. To get a 2, you have multiple approaches. And then finally, a 3 provides specific examples of how to approach key concept skills in the classroom. And this is where you have that opportunity to go in and say, this is what you can do for your low students, for your on-target students, and for your advanced students, while dealing with similar content and how you can approach the cognition and context somewhat differently depending on the students. This is where your new teachers are going to thrive, and your veteran teachers who are grasping the new concept of assessment are going to find recourse when they go and say, I don't know how else to teach this, and you have it in there. This is also in your PLC meetings when you're candid and open with each other, and you say, hey, I just don't get how to effectively deliver division to these students. I've mastered everything with them, and they have mastered it and illustrated that they understand the concept of multiplication. But for some reason, when I talk division with them, they struggle with it. So What's another approach that I can have to teaching them division? That's the kind of stuff you would put in here out of your PLC meetings. Okay, so you can see that this revising these curriculum guides that you're going to use it's a constant thing if you have PLCs or some similar form of communication going on within your building. So what would a 3 look like in your curriculum guide? Again, this is where you can highlight working with differentiated instruction, and I encourage you to do so. Okay, so now that you have finished the 5 different areas within the curriculum guide, this is a total, all the criteria together and the 4 ratings under each of the criterion. Okay, we've looked at all these separately, now we're looking at them all together. So your goal now for the last checkpoint is to add your approaches or strategies to your classroom. So your assignment, add the last column to your curriculum guide and submit approaches for each unit. One unit needs to meet a level 3 from the rubric. Identify that unit by highlighting it for me. What this means is that now that you're done, I want you to go back and look, and I want you to identify one unit in there, and I want you to concentrate on that one unit and highlight it within your curriculum guide. You know, just color the background yellow or something. And I want you to get every criterion up to a 3 within that unit. So that means going back to this checklist here, this rubric, and seeing what it takes to get a 3. And I want you to do that just for one unit. It's difficult to do it for all, but I want you to do it for one so that you can get that skill down of how you're doing it for one. And that will be the last thing you're going to do, and then you're going to do a self-check on your own curriculum document, and we'll do that at the very end of class.